So welcome everyone to this special webinar with our partner Condatis to discuss verified ID and FaceCheck. So why are we here today? So we really wanted to bring us all together to discuss verified ID because we had a lot of conversation with some of you and you had a lot of conversation with your different cybersecurity specialists, partners, and so on regarding the recent scattered spider attacks. And we really wanted to discuss how we can bring solutions like verified ID to elevate your trust in digital identity against that kind of attacks, but also to use that for additional use cases. So today we'll have the chance to discuss that with the wonderful team with me today. So we have Stacey Quintana, who is a global black belt at Microsoft. What a fancy title for the job. Mike Lynch from Condatis, who is IAM lead, and as well Gillian Jones from Condatis, who is head of travel, tourism, and hospitality. So we have a wonderful team today. So we will focus on different subjects. So we'll start on why solutions such as verified ID matter. So why are we here today? Thanks to Stacey, following with a deep dive demo on verified ID and the different use cases. We will also discuss more the architecture and integration on verified ID. So you will have as well the keys to move forward. And finally, Condatis will help us to understand real-world scenario as they have already implemented the solution with different customers and have a lot of experience on that. This webinar is part of a series of webinars we are kicking off with Condatis on Entra, as we believe it's a big subject for all of us today. So welcome all, and Stacey, over to you.
Thank you, Camille. Good morning, everybody. My name is Stacey Quintana, Global Black Belt, as Camille said. Very posh title. Basically, that just means I'm a specialist in a particular area of technology, and for me, that is advanced identity. So various solutions sit within that bracket over and above Entra ID P1 and P2. I'm going to talk to you today about verified ID. So we've got different flavors of verified ID, which I'll make very, very clear. But essentially, what we're looking to do with this solution is to really help organizations have a stronger way to verify that somebody is who they say they are. There are three particular use cases that we focus on in our documentation, which are onboarding, access, and recovery. However, there are a lot of business use cases, much broader than this, where verified ID sits. So Condatis will be talking about some of that later. And there's also published documentation on different use cases, both for workforce identities and also external identities. So we'll pop a link into the main page for you to go and read those business cases as well. So let's get started. So why are we talking about identity verification? Why is it important? So you'll see a lot of the analysts out there commenting about identity verification and kind of airing their concerns and their stats around why identity verification is so important. Now, based on the conversations that I have, we hone in more on, a few different areas really as to why identity verification is becoming such a growing concern. One of the first ones that I do talk about quite a lot is around help desk exploits, impersonation. So this is where, you will have seen in the news, you will be possibly worried about it yourselves, where attackers increasingly target IT service desks. they're impersonating legitimate users, they're gaining access to sensitive systems. And this is really where traditional verification methods like, taking an employee ID number or a basic security question from the employee before completing an action is really where it can be quite easily exploited. So that is the weak link where we see attackers being able to like reset credentials or be able to escalate their privileges once they've got through that help desk scenario. The next one is really around like remote hiring and onboarding fraud. Now, there's a rise of this and a continuing rise of this, and I think we'll see a lot more growth around this area in the next couple of years. But because we all work remotely now, or we have a hybrid scenario where our employees are sometimes in the office or at home, it's really led to attackers being more sophisticated in the way that they are, committing fraud during those hiring and onboarding processes. So, they might be leveraging things like deep fakes, proxies. They'll have like forged documents, for example, to impersonate candidates that are applying for jobs and starting work. And that really is a very difficult scenario to be able to handle. So what we want to make sure is obviously that the person that we're granting access to on day one when they join our organisation is actually the person that we want to be granting the access to. One of the third scenarios is around like fragmented identity systems, which can cause these verification gaps. So, you might be in a position today where your identity systems could be quite legacy. You're not fully kind of like cloud managed. You don't have a unified platform for identity, for example, or authentication. And when those systems don't interoperate, that's where we get these gaps in verification. But also it's really inconsistent from a user experience perspective. We lack the visibility that we need because things are not working together. We've got increased risk around that, and then we've also got that compliance side of things, because obviously it gets a little bit more complicated when we don't have everything together and easily available to be able to report across. There's things like over permissioning and audit failures. So really strong identity verification is very difficult, and without it, implemented at the moment, then you're really struggling to enforce that least privilege and validate those access rights to very sensitive information. Got lots of stale access, lots of over permission, lots of like failed audits as a result. So where we can implement something that gives us that necessary verification around the access, then we want to try and implement those things. And the last one really is around privacy, around compliance, and where we're trading off on that user experience, balancing security, balancing privacy, balancing usability. It's always a challenge when it comes to verification, when it comes to authentication. Users often will resist biometric verification or certain checks that you want to do. Usually it's due to kind of like privacy concerns. Well, I don't want you to have access to my phone. I don't want you to be able to see everything I'm doing in my personal life on my personal device. And there are certain regions that I deal with at a global scale that have very, very strict data protection laws as well. So it's not just about the user, wanting to have their privacy protected. Also, there are laws in place that we need to respect, especially when we're implementing different methods for verification. So generally the impact of this that you're going to be seeing is going to be quite significant. So, if we think about how poor identity verification processes can be, you'll be feeling things like, significant delays with onboarding. That could be a really tedious process for somebody joining the business, as well as somebody, within help desk or the hiring manager that's bringing that person into the organization. Things like account recovery if somebody loses all of their devices and really needs to get access back in to be productive and do their job. Sometimes it's hours, it's days to get them back in. Access provisioning, again, there's a lot of bottlenecks that customers talk to me about around identity verification that really impairs both security and productivity for the user. the mechanism that we have around verification is also a major attack vector, really. Whether we're thinking about stolen passwords, impersonation, over permissions, attackers are going to exploit those things. They're going to exploit help desk vulnerabilities. They're going to exploit onboarding fraud, and they're just going to go for anything and everything to get the access that they need, as we know. And when it comes to compliance, that's a challenge in itself, just to keep up to date with all of the different regulations that you get. There's multiple regulations that might come out every single week. So, a lot of the compliance officers or compliance related roles that I speak to within customers, they actually come at this from a different perspective in terms of concerns around insider threat, around third-party access. So if we don't have the ability to properly validate, then that's where we're getting, increasing concerns around third-party access, around failing audits because we're unable to prove that we're verifying people correctly, whether that's internal or external. So just continuing on from that, we're constantly online, both work and personal. So, from a work perspective, when you are, dealing with people within and outside of your organization, even customers themselves, how do you really know that it's the right person that you're dealing with? How widespread is this issue? So we can see three areas here I've touched on in the last slide. But these are the areas that Microsoft sort of really focuses in on in our documentation, and one of which I'll give you a bit of a user side demo for today as well. But onboarding shortcomings. So we've got to be able to protect from that candidate impersonation side of things. We need to understand that the person we're speaking to is that person we want to employ or have interviewed. Attackers will take information of qualified candidates. They will apply for a job to get into your organization. They will use deep fakes to impersonate somebody's appearance online. And that's something that Forrester are really citing at the moment, and have claimed that that is kind of like top 5 security threats that we're seeing as of last year, probably grown this year. Access challenges. So we've got data all over. It's growing every single day. The amount of data that we have and have to protect and have to control and have visibility around. So those access challenges become greater as a result. So this is where we've got a high percentage of personal data within our organization that's really falling around under those like privacy regulations that I was talking about. So it's really imperative for us to know who's got access to what, and do we actually trust these identities and who they're claiming to be before we're giving them access to these resources. We've got to have those really strict compliance requirements in place, particularly if you're a regulated industry. So, thinking FinServe, knowing your customer, anti-money laundering, thinking about healthcare and patient privacy laws, thinking about education, thinking about the privacy of students and that privacy protection laws that are there. And there's so many more examples that we can give. But, access to resources without that proper verification is really creating a risk. So just accessing a single improperly secured API, for example, that result can be massive in terms of a data breach that could affect millions of people, customer accounts, and those things can really, we can lower the risk around that if we're implementing proper identity verification. Help desk vulnerabilities, I've talked about impersonation quite a lot, but there are some stats on screen which are US-based stats, around 1.1 billion losses due to impersonation scams of all different types. But in the UK itself, there were 35% of businesses in the UK that experienced an impersonation attack over the last 12 months. So we can see it is impacting the UK, and we do need to be focusing around how we are verifying identities. It could be just a 10-minute call with the help desk. Somebody could get access to internal systems, do the damage that they need to do, shut down all your systems, and cause you to lose millions or billions of pounds as a result. So it's extremely important that, again, from a help desk perspective, we've got that verification in place. So I'm going to touch on scattered spider. And I'm going to caveat this because I'm not saying that verified ID is 100% going to mitigate this risk. Let's face it, no security tools are ever going to 100% guarantee that you won't get an attacker within your environment. But tools can help. So we know the kinds of tactics that scattered spider use. If you're not familiar, they're very well known for impersonation of users via the service desk, via social engineering. They'll go to great lengths to get the information that they need. The credential harvesting that they do, bypassing MFA, privilege escalation, hybrid identity exploitation, and whilst I say verified ID can't solve everything, it certainly can help. So, if we used verified ID and in particular the premium part of verified ID, which is that FaceCheck capability, we could really disrupt attackers like scattered spider. We can break that chain. We can stop them gaining access by impersonating users, by tricking help desks, and stop them resetting credentials. We're adding a non-transferable biometric layer. It can't be phished, it can't be forwarded, it can't be shared. We can really help around things like MFA fatigue and shared credentials as a result. So we're really getting in there. We're really trying to counter that lateral movement that they make, those privileged tactics, by putting a high assurance verification in front of that access request to stop access to sensitive resources when we cannot verify that somebody is who they say they are. I did mention deepfakes in an earlier slide. Again, it's a growing threat vector. We're seeing it more and more and more. Proper verification methods are the things that will detect things like, static photos, 2D videos, loads of different spoofing types of attempts that can be made by attackers. And that's where things like the Microsoft Verified ID FaceCheck becomes a very resilient method against some of these tactics that we see. So there's lots of countermeasures that we can put in place, things that we can implement, real-time biometric verification, those non-transferable liveness checks, identity-bound verifications, also from a compliance perspective, making sure it's ISO compliant with pad detection, and step-up verification built into access packages before we allow their access, and putting verification at reset and access points. So like I say, that's just touching on an example there with scattered spider. I'm not saying we can save the world, but we can certainly help. So how do we actually help? So this is where we bring in verified ID into processes that help build that two-way trust between whoever's at the end of the phone and the help desk, or various scenarios before we give access. And it's how we make that process a little bit more time-saving and cost-efficient. So Microsoft Verified ID is a managed verifiable credential service. So what it's going to do is it's going to allow you to build that unique user-owned identity scenario. And it's going to make things within your organization a lot more trustworthy, a lot more secure, a lot more efficient between the people within the organization that you are dealing with. So as I say, 3 different use cases. I won't go into these too deeply again, because I think I've explained them all. But yeah, we kind of focus into these 3 scenarios. So verified ID itself is very easy to issue. It can be used more or less anywhere, and you can verify confidently that somebody is who they say they are. So essentially, it's a card that a user keeps within their digital wallet. They keep it on their personal device within the Microsoft Authenticator application, and it will attest to certain identity attributes about that user. So it means that you have this trusted authority that is confirming an identity attribute about a user. So Organizations like yourselves can issue these credentials. You are the trusted authority, being either the employer, being a university, being a government entity, whatever it is that you are. And you can allow your users to create these verified IDs to confirm something about themselves, who they are, nationality, employment status, training skills, permissions, whatever it might be. There are multiple attributes you can put into the verified ID and then distribute that to users to be able to present that and verify themselves. Verified IDs can be used more or less anywhere. So, they are user-owned credentials. The user presents them when requested to present them from their digital wallet, which is the Microsoft Authenticator app, and they can see their identity attributes that are stored within that verified ID, and they have this single verified ID for multiple verifications that you might ask them to do. You can be very confident when users are presenting that verified ID, and you will get confidence scores around a liveness match, particularly if you're using things like FaceCheck, that somebody is who they say they are. So, as I say, users are requesting verified ID from the organization. The process is quite easy, and I'm going to show you the process of how a user actually does it as part of the demo. So hopefully it will become clear in how that works. And I'm also going to show you a slide on the architecture as well. FaceCheck builds on verified ID. So verified ID is available within your licensing today, depending on what flavor you have as to what capabilities you have. FaceCheck is a premium, so none of you will own this unless you've bought it. But FaceCheck is the that next level of verification assurance. It's that the way that we are implementing a way for you to have a high assurance verification in a way that is very privacy respecting for your users. So we are taking that facial matching and we're building it into that identity verification process. So the FaceCheck Premium is an add-on, as I say, and it really gives you that additional layer around liveness of the user. So you're really being able to know, who is presenting a verified ID in that very single moment that it's presented. And all it takes is a quick selfie from the user. So users with verified IDs will present their verified ID, like in a help desk scenario, for example. The help desk might say, might push a FaceCheck verification to say, I need you to give me some assurance you are who you say you are before I change your password. The user will get that prompt within their Authenticator app. They'll take a selfie, which will be compared to an individual's photo that is stored as part of their verified ID. So that liveness check will be done between the photo and the person taking the selfie. Now, the way that it's privacy respecting is the fact that it doesn't actually pass, it doesn't it doesn't store any personal information after the face check has been completed. So that live selfie is discarded. No worrying about the fact that I'm sat here in my pajamas doing a live selfie. Hopefully they're not and they've got dressed for the day, but you never know. And verifying the organization is actually speaking to the right person that is claiming they want to change their password. So the help desk will get a confidence score once that check has been done, and that will show how close the match is to the stored verified ID photo. So we set a threshold as Microsoft by default. That default threshold is like 75%. You possibly would want like a 98% assurance, particularly around something that's very sensitive, if you were granting access, for example, and using verified ID to do that. So you can actually set the threshold around that confidence score that somebody is who they say they are as well. So there's a lot of control that you have around that. So FaceCheck itself can be useful in multiple functions. Like I've said, the help desk, if you're a banking customer, for example, and and you've got an unusually large transaction that needs to be made, you might want to make sure that it's the right person spending that much money. In education, you could be a university, you want to make sure that the right student is about to take an online exam and we've not got somebody posing to be that student taking an online exam. And this is where FaceCheck can be built in to get that higher assurance that you're dealing with the right person. So there's lots of ways that you can get started with verified ID. In the bottom rectangle, you can see partners, one of which we've got on the call today is Condatis. These partners are actively implementing solutions for various business use cases. Go and have a chat to them, hear more today from Condatis as well. We are building a portfolio of verification partners that we're working with in that top rectangle, so you might already be familiar or using some of those right now, but they are all being built into the verification process and will grow. In terms of licensing, so licensing is you get verified ID included in Microsoft Entra ID for free. And anybody can issue or verify themselves. So up to 50,000 monthly active users will be completely free within any of the plans that you have for Entra ID. If you want to use the FaceCheck capability, if you want that higher level of reassurance, that is an add-on. Now that can be standalone or it can be bought as part of a bundle with the Entra Suite. I'm sure you've all heard about the Entra Suite, but the Entra Suite will give you 8 FaceChecks per user per month in a pool for you to be able to leverage. So there's various different ways. I'm not going to go too much into detail about pricing and stuff. So please just talk to your sales representative about that, and they can talk to you a little bit more about pricing. Just gives you a little bit of an idea of how we license it. So help desk and recovery. So this is the part where I really want to kind of touch on how we help from a help desk perspective. So account recovery, help desk scenarios, one of the most common conversations that I have. And that process commonly is quite expensive because of the time that we spend doing it, quite inefficient again because we don't have a simple way to do identity verification. So what we want to do is try and leverage things like FaceCheck to help make that whole process cheaper, faster, safer, essentially. The help desk itself is a really common, place to kind of go for an attacker. Can cause huge damages if it's not properly protected, if you haven't got the right security methods in place when these transactions are happening between the help desk and the users. So we've seen attacks out there in the news where this has happened, and we want to really make sure that help desk isn't taking 3 hours to respond to something that a user needs, because all that that's doing is impacting productivity, it's impacting the business in terms of the work that's being done. So what we really want to do is be able to kind of prevent that from happening. So today you could sit down, you could ask yourself a question, and you could be, can I truly 100% be sure that the person I am giving remote help desk access to isn't a convincing impersonation of my trusted employee? So I'm going to do a bit of a demo now to show you, how it could work and what that could look like. So let me bring up my demo. Here we go. Now reshare my screen. Okay. I'll take the chance to have a little drink of my brew. Okay, so from a user perspective, so I'm a user, I need help desk support. I go to Contoso support. When I go to Contoso support, I go to the help desk web page. Right now, I'm not going to have a verified ID. So for any of you, that are new to this, you're going to have to implement this within your organization. So it's really easy for somebody to get a verified ID. So essentially what they'll do at this stage when they get to the help desk page is get a verified ID employee card. Now, in order to get that, the user would click on Get My Verified ID here. Now, this is something you as an admin will enable within the Entra portal that then allows this to appear in the user's My Access portal. So once you switch it on, they will have this availability to get their own verified ID. So as a user, you can go ahead and get that verified ID. So when you do, you scan a QR code. So you'll use your phone, you'll scan this QR code, and then it will take you through the process of being able to create that verified ID. So here, this will take you into the Microsoft Authenticator app. And this is where you'll have a verified ID option down here once you switched it on. So when we click on the verified ID and we click scan QR code, we can go ahead and scan that QR code. When we scan that QR code, that's a way that we take the attributes of that user, we put that into a verified ID, and we allow the user to create their verified ID. So they add that verified ID, and then they've got their verified ID to be able to use. They can go back to the Contoso help desk and they can say, okay, I now have my verified ID, so I have my card. Again, they'll use the Authenticator app. They'll scan a QR code, use the Authenticator app to be able to present their verified ID. So when they go into here, they'll take their camera, obviously, they will scan the QR code, they'll open in the Authenticator app, they'll have the verified ID here, so they can use that verified ID. The help desk at this point is prompting for a face check. So this is where the user will do their face check. They will scan their face. That liveness check is being done against the photo that is in the portal for that user or in the systems for that user. And you can see here at the end that we have the person who is doing the request for help, and we can see the face check score is 95.2 blah 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 %. So the assurance is quite high that this user is who they say they are. So it's actually quite straightforward and quite easy from a user perspective to be able to get a verified ID and then to be able to present that when you're going through that help desk scenario. And the help desk at all times can be assured that that person is who they say they are. So that is quite easy from the perspective of the user. Hopefully that put that into context. I'll go back to the screen. Okay, so what we just saw there was the scenario that began with the employee who wanted to leverage the help desk. It could have been for changing a password, recovering their account, whatever that might have been. The employee navigates to that self-service help desk, requests access. The help desk challenge the employee and ask them to present a valid employee verified ID and to complete that face check for that higher assurance level. The employee goes and creates their verified ID, presents their verified ID and completes the face check, and then gets access to do that help desk task that they're asking about. So the process is all quite straightforward. It's all quite easy to implement. It's, a self-service capability, and it's really a lot of, increase in terms of trust, increase in terms of security, high assurance. It's going to help you meet those certain audit tasks that you need to meet, and really be able to help you, be assured that somebody is who they say they are. So at this point, I think, Mike, you wanted to come in and just tell us a little bit more about a scenario recently you've dealt with here.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So Condatis is currently making live a project that is securing the help desk of a private equity firm using verified ID and face check. It's enabling their help desk agents to confidently verify identities of callers, particularly for high-risk scenarios such as password resets and elevated access. Condatis built as part of the solution a help desk verification portal. So the agents can use this to search for the caller's profile and judge the need for FaceCheck verification, as Stacey mentioned, based on scenarios such as risk, location, or type of request. The agents also utilize a choice of activation notifications, in this case, a company email or a one-time password. If we're looking at broadening the solution for customers, then we can configure things like natural language bots into the system with APIs, making it potentially fully automated and fully self-serve. Also, if somebody is a new joiner and on the HR system of that organization, but is yet to start, again, we can automatically provision through APIs them into Entra ID so that they can use the help desk provision from the start of their very first day. So that's a scenario that we're currently working on.
So thanks, Mike. And I know we're over time. I'm just going to really quickly build this slide out just to show kind of the architecture around verified ID, but essentially it just really kind of goes over everything that I've already covered. Verified ID begins and ends with the individual verified ID holder. They manage their own verified IDs. They store them in that digital wallet, which is a Microsoft Authenticator app, on their personal device or even on the works device if you give them corporate devices. They can see the identity claims for, or information on verified ID. So they know what data they're sharing, they know what they're presenting from a user perspective, they can feel confident that their privacy is respected. And it all starts with, how a user, gets a verified ID. So we saw in the example how a user requests a verified ID. So you as the organization will switch on the ability for that user to be able to get a verified ID. The user will go into their My Access portal and they will request a user ID, which might be prompted through a process like the help desk scenario that we saw in my demo. Before you, issue a verified ID, you attest the identity claims for that particular user. So you will have already got information about that user, potentially from onboarding or whatever processes you have around identifying documentation of that user, certifications of that user that you can build in or pop into that verified ID when that user requests it. Then there is a record of public key material that is created for that verified ID, which allows you to then issue that credential back to that particular user. That user, as I say, then owns and manages that verified ID and can use that verified ID for many different verifications that they want to make throughout the process of their access and general identity lifecycle. When they request access to something, they will send their verified ID or present their verified ID to the person that needs to verify that they are who they say they are when they're trying to gain access to resources. The verifier will initiate a verification challenge, i.e. a face check like we saw from the help desk scenario, to say, I need proof that you are who you say you are, do me a face check. That proof of identity gets done and presented back so that that assurance can be given via a public lookup to key material. That might be government identities, it might be what's stored within the issuer's trust system to be able to give that assurance that somebody is who they say they are before that user then gets granted access. So that is the general high-level architecture. We do have various different ways to implement verified ID, whether it's really quick and easy or whether it's a little bit more advanced. But we can dive deeper into kind of the technical ins and outs of it on separate calls. So if any of you want to do that, please feel free to reach out to either myself or to Condatis. And at that point, I'm going to shut up and I'm going to hand over to Condatis.
Okay, let me just share the presentation. Okay, hopefully that's working. All right, over to you, Mike.
Hi, a lot of you already know us, but for those that don't, Condatis is a Microsoft-only, identity-only consultancy. We've over 40 identity experts and we're headquartered in Edinburgh. We work with Microsoft and customers across all Microsoft Entra identity products, and we can engage in every way, really, from initial discovery right through to full implementation. And I think in the context of this webinar, it's important to say we've been recognised as a Microsoft Engineering Airlift Award winner for Partner Excellence in Microsoft Entra Verified ID. So we know what we're talking about in that space. Gillian.
Thank you very much. So just building kind of upon what Stacey was talking about and securing your help desk. What I think is really interesting about the technology that we're talking about here with Verified ID is actually how much it's extrapolating out across multiple different use cases on a global scale. So, for example, we've mentioned Scattered Spider and Verified ID being a really good way to potentially safeguard against the attacks that we're seeing more and more against Marks and Spencers, against, a variety of different well-known organizations. But again, we're also seeing Canada rolling out a verified credential program, which will be compatible with Verified ID. Similarly, as we mentioned at the beginning of the call, I work across travel and tourism. So we're looking at companies like IATA, who are regulating the aviation industry. They are also looking at solutions like this. So I think what's really interesting is starting small, starting with the ability to implement something that will be impactful, such as securing your help desk, but also knowing that this trend is not going away. It's going to be here on a global scale. So actually anything that you're doing now in terms of looking at your help desk or securing access to particularly valuable resources, securing very valuable transactions, whatever the specific use case might be, you will see more and more of this coming down the line. So you're future-proofing as well. So in terms of some real world examples, these are projects that Condatis have been heavily involved in, varying levels. Some of them have been proof of concept, some of them have been MVP, some of them have been full deployment. So again, we really know what we're talking about in terms of implementing the solution at size and scale. And the first one I wanted to talk about was basically securing one of the most complicated, one of the most fragmented, and one of the most frustrating supply chains that thankfully we all have experienced, and that is travel. So we know that travel is particularly complicated. You've got different identities stored across multiple different providers, whether that be an airline app, a hotel app. You might even have an account with the airport, depending on how much you travel within that kind of particular airport. If it's your home airport, that might be the case. The traveler data is everywhere. So there is not one unified view of it, and it's really difficult and really heavily regulated. So data sharing in this particular environment and this particular supply chain is really, really complicated. It doesn't flow with the visitor. You'll have to have multiple logins. You'll have to do the same information and pass the same information over and over again. Really repetitive, really, really frustrating. We talked about things like MFA fatigue or username and password fatigue. We see that all the time. And again, it just leads to a not very good experience. And one thing I love about working in travel is that we all have experienced this. We've all been through this process and we know how frustrating it can be. The reason that I'm highlighting this particular example is A, because it's familiar, but B, it's really relevant across a number of different industries. So where you have data silos, where you have really, really complicated data sharing methodology, this is a way that we can fix that, and Verified ID is a really, really great example of it. So this could be kind of insurance when you think I'm going to log into my insurance account and you should be able to see, home, pet, car. Often that's not as easily done as we might like it to be. So again, we see this across a number of different industries. So what we did was we were actually able to create an end-to-end seamless travel experience. And this was by using Verified ID, and it was putting control and ownership of that identity in the hands of the user. So effectively, the user became the API. We were no longer relying on the airport talking to the airline, talking to the hotel, talking to the car rental company, talking to the in-destination experiences. That was all done by the individual. This is a huge use case. This is a really big, really complicated, border-crossing, multi-party ecosystem play. But what I think has been really interesting is being able to take the different component parts, the different interactions that we can have over that, and making this something that's applicable across different industries. So we don't have to solve for the biggest possible use case we could have, although we did. We can take the learnings and we can take some of the examples and apply that to the real world scenarios that you might be facing today. The second example I wanted to bring up was actually with the NHS. So again, this was a deployment that came out of the unfortunate situation with COVID. And this was really allowing us to expedite onboarding, to move critical people, critical workers within the NHS system, doctors, nurses, whoever it may have been, and move them around different organisations. Verified ID, because you are in control of the data, you are in control of that credential, means that you're not having to carry around a ring binder of all of your qualifications. You're not going to have the same level of onboarding, which we believe from our data was 4 weeks, that was reduced down to 4 minutes whilst using this solution. You could combine both your identity with your qualifications, meaning that that onboarding process was so massively accelerated. And this was at the point where people were in such crisis. It was such an impactful project to be part of. We were able to kind of unify the NHS trust system. So everyone looks at the NHS, they think it might just be one organisation. It's not. It's lots of individual organisations within there that have their separate own IT, they have their own separate infrastructures. It is essentially multiple different mini companies within one organisation. And again, this allowed us to broaden our ability to cross over those organisational boundaries and mean that onboarding was rapidly accelerated. And it could not have been more impactful. The final use case I wanted to draw our attention to, again, is completely different. So this was actually looking at Sellafield, so nuclear decommissioning site. And again, talk about kind of business critical. The impact of things not going well in this sort of environment is obviously very, very, very serious. So what we were looking at here was combining the identity of the individual with their qualifications. So are they a suitably qualified and experienced person? They are able to do the job that they are there to do. They have the relevant qualifications that are in date. They are time-stamped. They are as up-to-date as they can be. And therefore, they can go on-site. They can access physical areas, digital areas, and they can perform the role that they need to do. Two things about this that were really critical. Stacey mentioned before the audit trail. So it was auditable to see who had performed what actions. And again, that audit trail allowed them to mean that they were able to mitigate potential fines, potential financial impacts, because as I said, as a heavily regulated industry, as a very, very serious business of nuclear decommissioning, what we want to make sure is that you had that audit trail so that there were no potential fines and there were no penalties coming their way. And again, this was something that we worked on in parallel with Microsoft using the same underlying technology. This is a real whistle-stop tour across 3 kind of very different use cases. The kind of key purpose here being start with your help desk. Get the technology in place, build from there, look at what comes next, whether that be looking at, securing high value resources, securing high value transactions, whatever it might be. But this is the sort of technology that you can build upon, and we will see global initiatives that we're going to be compatible with this. So you are future proofing. Happy to discuss this in more detail. On the screen, you will see some more demos. There will also be the ability to read some more about the case studies, again, across the different sectors. You might think, but that doesn't really specifically apply to me. That's what Mike and I are here for, right? We're here to chat it through, to say, okay, well, we could do a bit of this and a bit of that, and this is how it would actually answer your business challenges today. That's really the DNA of Condatis, is figuring out what is the business problem that you have today, how can we use the tooling that we have available to us, and putting that jigsaw piece together. So please feel free to scan those QR codes, book some time with us, reach out to your Microsoft reps. Obviously, we work very, very closely with Microsoft, and we're happy to help. And even if you think it's a question of, would this work in this scenario, that's exactly what we're here to help and advise on, and we are delighted to do so. So please do feel free to reach out.
Perfect.
Camille, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you. So I hope everyone had the time to scan the different QR codes, and we will send it over as well. Perfect. So we are almost at the end of this webinar. So thanks again to all the team that have shared the really good content with all of us today. So to move forward, we discussed different ways to support you on this. So if you have scanned the QR code, Condatis can support you to discuss more about verified ID and even more all around your identity strategy if you want. Please feel to reach out to your Microsoft cybersecurity specialist to also help you to build your identity journey. As well as we've shared, that we will have some upcoming webinar around other Entra workloads. So we'll share with you the different invites soon on this. Maybe a quick word on that. just a slide as well, maybe to illustrate this, but verified ID is part of this bigger Entra journey and identity journey. So we start with this verified ID for the onboarding, as we said, but we can move forward with the governance of the access of the users. So this is a part we really want to cover during the next webinar. And then we have much more to discuss following that, with as well the network piece. But I will keep it for now, and we will share it. I will share more on that during the next webinars. And finally, we have lots of content available online. So a few things on this. So you can start an Entra Suite trial for free. We will as well share all of that. You can as well look at the different guide online to set up FaceCheck and read on our different blogs and so on. So lots of resources available depending on how you want to move forward to support your identity journey. So thanks everyone, and I think we're ready to close. So thank you and have a lovely day.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.